Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. The sleek black Bentley glided to a stop outside an upscale bistro in the heart of the city. Heads turned as the chauffeur stepped out and opened the rear passenger door. A pair of stiletto heels emerged, followed by long, shapely legs sheathed in sheer stockings. The woman who stepped onto the sidewalk exuded elegance and sophistication. Her figure-hugging emerald cocktail dress accentuated every curve, while a string of pearls adorned her graceful neck. Carefully styled chestnut hair framed a face with high cheekbones and striking green eyes enhanced by expertly applied makeup. As she stood, smoothing her dress, a distinguished-looking man in a tailored suit exited the other side of the car. He rounded the vehicle and offered his arm to the statuesque beauty. "Shall we, my dear?" His deep voice held a hint of amusement. The woman's ruby lips curved in a tentative smile as she placed her hand on his proffered arm. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this, Richard." "Nonsense, Brandy. You look absolutely stunning. The entire restaurant will be envious." Richard patted her hand reassuringly as he guided her towards the entrance. Brandy's heart raced as they approached the maitre d'. She felt exposed, vulnerable. It had been mere weeks since she'd reunited with her former classmate Richard after years apart. In that time, her world had been turned upside down. The reunion had been chance, a fundraising gala where Brandy had been working as part of the catering staff. She'd been shocked when Richard recognized her, even more so when he'd insisted on catching up over coffee the next day. Their meeting had been awkward at first. Brandy, then still presenting as male, had stammered out an explanation of her journey over the past decade, her struggles with gender identity, her cautious steps towards transitioning. She'd expected judgment, disgust even. Instead, Richard had listened with compassion and understanding. "I want to help," he'd said simply. "Whatever you need to become your true self, I'll provide it." Brandy had been skeptical at first, but Richard's sincerity was evident. Before she knew it, she found herself agreeing to stay at his luxurious penthouse condo while beginning her transformation in earnest. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Richard had spared no expense, providing her with a lavishly decorated room filled with feminine touches, from the canopied bed draped in pastel silks to the ornate vanity stocked with high-end cosmetics. The walk-in closet was a fashionista's dream, brimming with designer dresses, shoes, and accessories. Under Richard's encouraging guidance, Brandy had embraced her feminine side with growing confidence. Hormone therapy had begun to soften her features and redistribute her body's curves. Electrolysis had removed the last stubborn traces of facial hair. Voice coaching helped her speak in a higher, more melodious register. Today marked a milestone, her first true outing as a woman. The nerves threatened to overwhelm her as the maitre d' bowed slightly. "Good evening, Mr. Harrington. Your usual table is ready." Richard nodded graciously. "Thank you, Antoine. My companion and I are looking forward to a memorable evening." As they followed the maitre d' through the dimly lit restaurant, Brandy was acutely aware of the curious glances from other diners. She gripped Richard's arm a bit tighter, willing herself to project confidence. They arrived at an intimate corner booth, partially secluded by lush potted palms. Richard gestured for Brandy to slide in first before taking his own seat. As the maitre d' presented the menus with a flourish, Brandy tried to still her trembling hands. "Relax," Richard murmured once they were alone. "You're doing wonderfully. No one would ever guess this is your first time out." Brandy managed a shaky smile. "I feel like an imposter, like at any moment someone's going to point and shout that I don't belong." Richard reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "You do belong. This is who you were always meant to be. I'm just honored to help you realize your true self." His words soothed some of Brandy's anxiety. She took a deep breath, inhaling the restaurant's ambiance of candlelight and soft music. "Thank you, Richard, for everything. I never imagined I'd be sitting here like this, looking like this. It's overwhelming." "You've come so far in such a short time," Richard said, "which is actually what I wanted to discuss over dinner. I have some ideas for the next phase of your transformation, if you're amenable." Brandy's eyebrows rose with curiosity. "Oh, what did you have in mind?" Before Richard could elaborate, their waiter approached to take their drink orders. Richard requested a bottle of champagne, ignoring Brandy's startled look. "We're celebrating tonight," he explained once the waiter had departed. "Your courage, your journey, your bright future ahead." Brandy flushed with pleasure at his words. "You make it sound so momentous. I still feel like I'm fumbling in the dark most days." "Which is precisely why I want to accelerate things," Richard said. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Brandy, you've made incredible progress, but I believe we can do even more. I have connections with some of the top gender reassignment surgeons in the world. We could fast-track the process, have you fully transitioned within months instead of years." Brandy's mouth fell open in shock. "Richard, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't possibly accept. The cost alone would be astronomical." Richard waved away her concerns. "Money is no object. I want to see you blossom into the woman you were always meant to be. Why prolong the process when we have the means to complete your transition swiftly and safely?" Brandy's mind reeled at the possibilities. Full feminization surgery, facial reconstruction if needed, chest augmentation. It was everything she'd dreamed of but never thought possible. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "It's all happening so fast." Richard smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to decide anything tonight. I just wanted to put the offer on the table. Think about it, discuss it with your therapist if you'd like. I only want what's best for you." Their conversation paused as the waiter returned with the champagne. Richard raised his glass in a toast once their flutes were filled. "To new beginnings and to the extraordinary woman you're becoming." Brandy clinked her glass against his, blinking back tears of emotion. As the bubbles fizzed on her tongue, she allowed herself to truly imagine the future Richard was offering. It was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. "Now then," Richard said, picking up his menu. "Shall we order? I hear the cocoa vin is superb here." Grateful for the shift to more mundane matters, Brandy perused her own menu. Her new manicure caught the candlelight as she turned the pages, reminding her how far she'd already come. Perhaps Richard was right. Why not embrace this opportunity to complete her journey? As they discussed the merits of various dishes, Brandy found herself relaxing into the role of elegant dinner companion. She even managed to place her order in a passable French accent, earning an approving nod from Richard. "You're a natural," he praised once the waiter had gone. "In no time, you'll be turning heads at all the finest establishments in town." Brandy ducked her head modestly. "I still have so much to learn. Sometimes I feel like an actress playing a part rather than truly being myself." Richard's expression grew serious. "That's exactly why I think accelerating your transition is the right move. The sooner your outer appearance aligns with your inner self, the more confident and authentic you'll feel." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small leather portfolio. "I've taken the liberty of putting together some options for you to consider. Top surgeons, recommended treatment plans, even some suggestions for finishing schools to help you fully embrace feminine etiquette and deportment." Brandy's eyes widened as she flipped through the meticulously prepared documents. The level of detail was staggering. Everything from hormone regimens to post-operative care had been carefully researched and outlined. "Richard, I don't even know how to process all of this," she said, overwhelmed by his thoroughness. He smiled indulgently. "Take your time. Review it all carefully. I want you to be fully informed and comfortable with every step of the process." Their meals arrived, momentarily distracting them from weightier topics. Brandy savored each bite of her perfectly prepared salmon, marveling at how different the dining experience felt in her new identity. Even the simple act of dabbing her lips with a napkin carried a certain feminine grace she was still getting used to. As they lingered over dessert and coffee, Richard broached another subject. There's one other matter I wanted to discuss, if you're open to it. Brandy nodded, curious. Of course. What is it? Richard hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but I was wondering if you've given any thought to changing your name legally once your transition is complete. Brandy is lovely, of course, but I thought perhaps you might want a fresh start with a new identity entirely. The question caught Brandy off guard. She'd been so focused on the physical aspects of transitioning that she hadn't given much consideration to legal matters. I guess I hadn't really thought about it, she admitted. Do you think I should? Richard shrugged. It's entirely up to you, of course. But a new name could be symbolic of your rebirth as your true self. Plus, it might make some practical matters easier if your documentation reflects your new identity from the start. Brandy pondered the idea. There was a certain appeal to shedding the last vestiges of her old life, embracing a completely new persona, but it also felt a bit like erasing her past entirely. I'm not sure, she said slowly. Brandy was the name I chose for myself when I first started exploring my identity. It holds a lot of meaning for me. Richard nodded understandingly. Of course. As I said, it's just something to consider. There's no rush to decide anything. He signaled for the check, then fixed Brandy with an intense gaze. I hope you know how proud I am of you. Your courage in embracing your true self is truly inspiring. Brandy flushed at the praise. I couldn't have done it without your support. I still can't quite believe how much you've done for me. Nonsense, Richard said firmly. I've merely provided the resources. The strength and determination have been all yours. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Brandy felt a surge of affection for her benefactor. Whatever came next in her journey, she was profoundly grateful to have Richard by her side. The valet brought Richard's Bentley around, and he gallantly helped Brandy into the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel himself. As they pulled away from the curb, Brandy found herself lost in thought, mulling over everything they'd discussed. The city lights blurred past the window as Richard navigated the late-night traffic with easy confidence. Brandy snuck glances at his profile, struck by how natural it felt to be out in public as a woman seated beside this powerful, generous man. Penny for your thoughts. Richard's voice broke through her reverie. Brandy smiled ruefully. Just trying to wrap my head around everything, I suppose. It's a lot to take in. Richard reached over to pat her knee reassuringly. I know it's overwhelming, but remember, there's no pressure. We can take things as slowly or quickly as you're comfortable with. They lapsed into comfortable silence for a few blocks before Brandy spoke again. Can I ask you something, Richard? Of course, anything. She hesitated, unsure how to phrase her question. Why are you doing all this for me? Not that I'm not incredibly grateful, but we barely knew each other in school, and now you're offering to spend a fortune to help me transition. I guess I'm just trying to understand your motivations. Richard was quiet for a long moment, and Brandy feared she'd offended him, but when he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. I suppose there are a few reasons, he said slowly. Part of it is simply that I have the means to help, and it brings me joy to use my resources to make a positive difference in someone's life. But if I'm being entirely honest, there's more to it than that. He paused at a red light, turning to meet Brandy's curious gaze. Do you remember Michelle Carpenter from our class? Brandy nodded, recalling a shy, awkward girl who'd often been the target of bullies. Richard's expression grew somber. She came out as transgender a few years after graduation, but she didn't have support or resources. Last I heard, He trailed off, swallowing hard. She took her own life. Oh, Richard, I'm so sorry, Brandy murmured, reaching out to squeeze his arm. He managed a sad smile. When I recognized you at that gala, looking so lost and unsure of yourself, it was like seeing Michelle's ghost. I knew I had to help if I could to give you the chance she never had. Brandy felt tears welling in her eyes at his raw honesty. That's incredibly kind of you. I had no idea." The light changed, and Richard turned his attention back to the road. "So, you see, in a way, I'm being entirely selfish. Helping you transition successfully eases my own guilt over not doing more for Michelle when I had the chance." "I don't think that's selfish at all," Brandy said softly. "I think it's beautiful that you're honoring her memory this way." Richard's lips quirked in a half-smile. "Well, I'm certainly getting something out of it, too. Watching you blossom has been incredibly rewarding. You're going to make a stunning woman, Brandy." She flushed at the compliment, a warm glow spreading through her chest. As they pulled into the underground garage of Richard's building, Brandy found herself filled with a new sense of purpose and determination. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. But as Richard unlocked the door to let them in, Brandy impulsively grabbed his hand. "Richard, I want to do it. All of it. The surgeries, the finishing school, everything. I'm ready to fully become who I was always meant to be." Richard's face lit up with genuine joy. "Are you sure? You don't have to decide right away." Brandy nodded firmly. "I'm sure life is too short for half measures. You've given me an incredible gift, and I want to seize it with both hands." Richard pulled her into a warm embrace. "I'm so proud of you, Brandy. We'll start making arrangements first thing tomorrow." As they parted, Brandy felt a flutter of nervous excitement in her stomach. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, she truly believed she could become the woman she'd always dreamed of being. "Oh, and Richard," she said as she headed towards her room, "I've been thinking about what you said about names. I think I'd like to be called Amelia. It was my grandmother's name." Richard's smile was radiant. "Amelia, it's perfect. Good night, Amelia. Sweet dreams." As Amelia, closed her bedroom door behind her, she felt as though she were closing the door on her old life as well. Tomorrow would bring the dawn of a new day, and with it the birth of Amelia in earnest. She made her way to the vanity, studying her reflection in the ornate mirror. Carefully, she began removing her makeup, each swipe of the cleansing cloth revealing more of the person she'd been. But instead of feeling exposed or vulnerable, she felt a sense of anticipation. Soon, the face staring back at her would be fully, unquestionably feminine. No more struggling to conceal masculine features or battling with stubborn facial hair. She'd have the delicate bone structure and soft contours she'd always envied in other women. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more.